we believe in freedom, but we believe in responsible freedom. Therefore, we put a premium on entrepreneurial initiatives, essentially created by individuals, who then also take responsibility for the consequences as opposed to state policy. That is one stance. You can have a different one. You can obviously believe, like some development economists believe, that essentially closing the funding gap is all about money and it's all about getting proper governments. It's not our view. You can have that view, but I think our point is it would be great if we could have an impact-oriented discussion on ethical values along the lines on what works and what doesn't work, and not who says what, and then get into ideologies immediately, right? I think I have studied this whole topic in the 80s at the University of St. Gallen, and then it was all driven by Cold War. It was all driven by communism versus capitalism, and you couldn't even come up with an idea that would kind of sound like public policy would have a role without being stamped a communist, or the other way around. I mean, you couldn't even talk about competition without being a hardcore capitalist. It's about like are masks in the US Republican or Democratic, right? And I think one of the big positives that the whole poverty economics in recent years has seen is its impact orientation, that people see what works. And so I think I see a huge role for science, and actually also for your institute, to help analyze what works and what doesn't work. And in our experience, what typically works is if entrepreneurship goes hand in hand with smart public policy, right? So there's no trade-off. I mean, and there are partnerships, and we have a chapter on ecosystems where we say the best is if public institutions, civil society institutions, and enterprises work together, and each brings his strength. So I think this is maybe one of the lessons that I would see. And the other one is really to, and that goes a little bit at IMD's core competence, to show, and Vanina has referred to it, how demanding it is to make good use of capital, and how typically we underinvest in leadership, in entrepreneurial qualities, in skills, and just think that it's done with money. I mean, when you look at how the global narrative goes, when there is a catastrophe, people do donor conferences, and then they think it's done with money, right? And what this leads to is an enormous amount of waste of money, of corruption, right? Because people do not think hard enough about what it takes to actually make good use of money. And this is very, very challenging and needs a lot of skills and needs a lot of education.
I agree, and something that I like about working with Peter, even though we have different opinions on many issues, is to have that ethical stance, that ethical grounding on the decision making. And I would go back to the intentionality too, And I think what I think we can learn also that can be replicable and can be also scalable is that start with a problem. So it being absolute poverty or whatever other grand challenge that we can address. Start with a problem. And then again, at this level, when we're talking about entrepreneurial solutions, look at the social innovation. Can you spot a solution that is different, that is more efficient and effective than how things were done, and more impactful, obviously, than how things were done in the past? So it's not enough just to have a problem and solve it in the same way that we always have done it. Is there something new here that eminently changes? And then is this solution, can we marry the business case with the impact? It's really impact at the core of the business, or if this company starts scaling up and growing, maybe they will drop the impact and drift away because they had to cut costs or do other things. So how core is the business, the impact to the business model? So when actually this company scales up, actually impact scales up too. So, and fourth, adjust the financing tools to that business. Do they need at the beginning, as Peter said, do they need a grant for skills and for training, or Do you need to do a convertible with a debt, and then if they grow, you transform it into equity, or you do equity? So think about the financing and the money and the tools after that adjust and allow that entrepreneur to actually flourish and grow. So don't start with just one financial tool and the financial, okay, we're an impact investor, we do just grants, or we do just equity, or we do just this, and then we apply a cookie cutter tool. So take the time to understand the business, to understand the capital needs and the entrepreneurial needs and the leadership needs, and then build a solution to allow that business to scale up. But for me, again, first start with the problem. So I see a lot of people that tend to forget that piece of the story,